Thank you. It's a joy, always a privilege to worship with you at Belleville. The years just fly by, and those who are older will recall almost 30 years ago, 30 years plus as a student visiting Belleville. Ons sê maar niks van tyd en ouderdom nie. As a young student visiting Belleville Church, and when Carlo welcomed the family, I realized now I have 3 children. Ons wag maar vir die grandkinders, nee. There's something about coming to the end of a year and standing on the precipice of something new. Almost like a bittersweet experience. Praat ek net van myself hier. So many things that I really wanted to do. And I look at a mentor like Pastor Zeman, and of course, you realize so much that could have still been done, just that we ran out of time. We started this year with good intentions. And if my memory serves me correctly, we started this year, and I think I preached the first sermon of the year. And because I forget the title, maybe there's someone that can remember the title. That was definitely one of the sermons. We started this year very simple, a 3-letter word. And we committed ourselves to saying yes, to yielding, to entering into the house of the Lord and serving Him. Good intentions, but as we end this year, we look back and we take stock of this year. And I don't know about you, but definitely feels like it slipped through my fingers. Because there's so much that I still wanted to do. But here we are, a few days to go before it all starts again, a new cycle. And although the lesson this week touches on the same character, we want to dig a little deeper, and if you will allow me, a familiar story to so many of us. We want to explore how Peter's journey can teach us that it's never too late. Never too late. I'm from Johannesburg, you know that. But whenever I go to Johannesburg, my blood pressure goes up. I wish I could tell you it's the altitude. Ooh, it's driving in Johannesburg. I don't know, the 2-lane highways are now 5-lane highways. If you are in the wrong lane, jy gaan verdraai. It's frustrating. And many times we end up kilometers from where we should have turned. And in many ways I see myself at the end of this year, and I realize, am I ready to exit? What is it that I still need to do? Is there perhaps one change? Perhaps a simple change. Perhaps a life-changing change. But whatever it takes, perhaps there is the need right now for us to change lanes. I don't think we'll ever get to have a better opportunity to embrace change than right now. I wouldn't recommend waiting for next week this time to embrace New Year's resolutions. We want to end this year well. And so please join me as we explore Peter's journey. Peter was really in the wrong lane. Peter was living a life of denial. But he was a human being like you and me. We know that there are things in our lives that we need to just delete. There are things in our lives that we needed to, somewhere during this year, we should have given it up. But we didn't. There are some burdens, some issues, some problems that we just dragged with us throughout this year. God has been so good presenting opportunities to us to change, or at least change lanes. But we are creatures of habit. And change comes so difficult to change lanes. Who wants to get out of their comfort zones? Who wants to be filled with fear and anxiety of the unknown? And so we rather continue the same old way, knowing that we need to change lanes. Peter's denial led him to rejection. If you are living a life of denial, if your year has been filled with repetitive decisions, choices, where you simply ignored or denied the need for change in your life, I plead with you today, learn from Peter. A life of denial leads to rejection. He was going in the wrong lane, prioritizing self-preservation over loyalty to God, loyalty to Jesus, love to Jesus. But I realized that we may be driving in the wrong lane, just prioritizing the wrong things. We could be heading for destruction and still denying it. So, please help me preach this sermon, because when you discuss the sermon over lunch, you won't be discussing me, you will be discussing yourself. Are you ready to help me with the sermon? You came to church to listen to a sermon, and now I'm turning the tables. It's simple. If you can help me with 2 words, change lanes. That's it. Can you help me with that? Let's say it together. Change lanes. That wasn't so difficult. So let's start. How does one who spends 3.5 years with Jesus, day and night, come to a point where you deny him consciously, knowingly, intentionally, with an oath? Doesn't sound right, does it? No one in their right mind would do that. Maybe to each other, but not to Jesus. So how do you get to that point? Let's look at Peter's journey. Number one, there were steps that led Peter to deny his Lord. The first step is Peter didn't realize the danger. You see, Peter felt that he was a self-made man. He had discipline, he had a backbone, he was a disciple. He was with Jesus all the time. Does that sound familiar? Some of us have a grand CV. We are third generation, perhaps fourth generation, any fifth generation Adventists here. A splendid CV of the roles and functions and duties and the leadership that we've performed in the church. We feel self-made. We feel disciplined. The problem is we don't realize the danger. If you are feeling comfortable as you wind down this year, then I want to say to you, perhaps you don't realize the danger you are in. If you sense no immediate or urgent need to change something in your life, then perhaps you don't realize the danger. But come with me now. What would you say to Peter at this point in his journey? Any advice? Thank God there's some people that are still awake. Change lanes. The second step Peter took was he gave into the temptation to sleep instead of praying. Now come now. Julle is te gou op Peter se. Isn't that what we do? Come now. We want to start the day with prayer. But the night before was just so late. And the Egyptian food was so heavy. Whatever our excuse, we find ourselves giving into the temptation at the crucial time at the beginning of the day when we should be committing ourselves to God. Peter may have been exhausted. Let's try and understand the man. The stress, the situation. Let's be understanding and empathetic. He gave into the temptation to sleep instead of praying. What would you say to Peter? The third step Peter took was to try and fight his own battles. But just think about it. This happens so quickly. First, you don't realize the danger. Then you give into the temptation to sleep. Just 5 minutes. The snooze button. We're all familiar with snooze, aren't we? Want julle kyk my soos snaaks. Yeah, some of us snooze for more than 5-10 minutes. Some of us are fast as snooze. We don't want to end this year snoozing. Which leads you to taking things into your own hands. Whatever the challenge, whatever the battle, whatever you're going through, if you are feeling like you are okay, and you are not tapping into the source of connecting yourself to God in prayer, you are going to deal with your problems in your own way. That's what Peter did. He began to fight his own battles in his own way. If only Peter had Belleville Church then to give him advice, what would the advice be? When they came to arrest Jesus, it was Peter who quickly decided to respond. So un-Christ-like. What was Peter doing with a sword? Oh, some of us have swords that we use. Sorry. Weapons of mass destruction. Two-edged. Destroys characters, reputations, and we lash it out, not realizing. Peter whips it up, cuts the man's ear. You know the story. Jesus just goes quietly, gently, and puts it back. You see, when we are feeling okay, we may tend to say and do things that totally hurts and destroys others. And we don't even care about it. Peter had no remorse. He was just defending himself. He was busy fighting his own battles. Are you in battle mode as you end this year? Perhaps you've had a series of problems and challenges and trials, and you are in battle mode. Peter tried to fight his own battles, but when he stood alone, he realized that no one else was going to join in this battle. The fourth step Peter took was to put distance between himself and Christ. Have you done that this year? A bit cautious? You know, you prayed for something. The answer was not as you demanded it would be. And so you put some distance, you know, you're playing it cool. You're just hanging, following from a distance, giving space. The problem is, as creatures created by God, our design requires a close connection with Christ. And the moment we put distance between ourselves and Christ, we feel that we are okay. We feel that we can deal with life on our own, and so we sleep instead of praying. We begin to fight our own battles. We begin following Jesus from a distance. Oh, church, what would you say to Peter? The problem is, as they took Jesus away, Peter followed, but he followed from a distance. He soon discovered that the night was cold. And so he goes and he tries to find warmth and comfort where the world finds warmth and comfort. Dis seker die plek waar ek niemand moet kyk nie, nee. Where have you been spending this year? Have you been seeking warmth and comfort where the world finds warmth and comfort? How has your year panned out? If you look back, is there space between yourself and your Savior? As Peter watched Jesus being taken away, he ended up by a strange fire. Oh, what would you say to Peter at this point in time? When you try and find warmth and comfort where the world finds warmth and comfort, you're going to find yourself out of place. Step number 6. Peter assumed a false identity. As he stood around that fire, the conversation turned to the man who was just arrested. And people started mocking and jeering. Peter did not find it amusing, but he needed to blend in. The problem is, in Matthew 26, a Christian is always going to stand out in the crowd. A Seventh-day Adventist Christian is supposed to be peculiar. I don't know if it is your accent, like Peter's, if it's your dress, if it's your attitude, if it's your work ethic, but you and I are supposed to stand out. But a series of small decisions, feeling okay, no need to pray, fighting your own battles, following from a distance. Do you see the sequence? Oh, if only you were there to tell Peter to do what? Before he realized it, someone came up to him while he was warming himself there that cold night. I know you. I recognize you. You can try and blend in as much as you can. But if you've met Jesus, there's no way that you can pretend to be someone else. Perhaps you are not following as close as what you should be, right now anyway. But assuming a false identity, really? I don't think anyone wants to be there. And so Peter denies the first time, the second time. By the third time, he had to really do some convincing, because everyone now agreed that you are one of his followers. And so with an oath, bringing shame, discrediting all disciples and followers, with an oath, denying that he ever knew Jesus. I want to stop there for a while, because earlier I should have warned you, and if I didn't, allow me to repeat myself. Denial leads to rejection. If you are denying that you are struggling with sin in your life, if you are denying the severity of the sin in your life, if you are pretending to be okay, if you are denying the fact that we need to be connected in prayer every day, if you are in denial, very soon you will reject Jesus too. Imagine assuming a false identity. Come on, church, what would we say to Peter? The seventh step, that last oath, denying knowing Jesus completely. I take you back to Matthew 26, because in verse 31, Peter says, I will not Even if I have to die, verse 33. Even if I have to die, I will not deny you. You see, good intentions are not good enough. We need to change lanes. The enemy would want us to believe that it's too late. In my favorite book outside the Bible, the book Desire of Ages describes the scene. Peter looks up when he hears the rooster crowing. He got so worked up, he got so wrapped up. His whole year, sorry, that's you and me. His whole evening, his whole experience was about himself. If you have lived for yourself, if the focus this year has been on making ends meet, surviving, dealing with one issue after the other, perhaps you need to take your own advice and change lanes. Because we are so quick to give advice, aren't we? Quick to tell Peter, hey, change lanes, man. What's wrong with you? Can't you see? What will it take for us to change lanes? What is necessary for us to identify that we are going in the wrong direction? That the lane we are occupying at this moment will lead to destruction. Peter hears the rooster crowing and he looks up. And as he looks up, Ellen White says in the book Desire of Ages, he looks at Jesus. The gaze of Peter met the gaze of Jesus. As Peter looked into the eyes of Jesus, a flood of memories, 3 years plus memories just went through his mind. Because the look of Jesus wasn't a look of disgust. It wasn't a look of anger. Jy weet, as baie van julle het vir Stella goed geken, en van kleins af kon sy net kyk. Just one look from my late mother and I would know. It wasn't that look, beloved. It wasn't even the look my wife gives me now and then. This was a different look. As Jesus looked at Peter, it was a look of love, a look of pity. Jesus was conveying to Peter, Peter, even if you feel it is too late, it's never too late. In that look, Jesus was saying, conveying to Peter, Peter, change lanes, Peter. Perhaps you are feeling right at the end of this year, it is too late. I want you to know it's never too late. The fact that you are here, it is never too late. As Peter remembered all this, he fled from the scene. He ran from that moment, ran back to the Garden of Gethsemane. And right there in the darkness, he wished he could just make things right. And he ran straight to where he thought Jesus had knelt and prayed. How he regretted that he turned over to sleep instead of praying. How he wished he could turn back the clock. And perhaps you and I feel like Peter today. But the reality is, 2024 is almost gone. And there's absolutely nothing we can do to turn it back. There is something that we can do, though. Change lanes. Peter didn't get an opportunity. I want you to know Peter did not feel worthy of being a disciple. Peter didn't feel like he qualified to be a disciple that day. Perhaps you're feeling that way too. So unworthy, so guilty. Because let's face it, what we do really well is we remind ourselves of all the bad things. Very few of us are really reminiscing about the good times in 2024. But almost instinctively we go to the negative things, the painful stuff. But I want you to know the fact that you are here today is a reminder that you can change lanes. You may have had moments of denial this year, denying your true spirituality, denying your need of Christ, denying so many things. But this year, you don't need to end 2024 in denial. You can end it in a declaration, in a commitment. To wrap up, John 21 and Luke 5, and you can go and read it. Luke chapter 5, verse 1 to 11, and John chapter 21. Almost the before and after picture. You see, as Peter wanted and longed for Jesus, even after his crucifixion, Peter never got an opportunity to really speak to Jesus. What do you do when you feel like you failed? What do you do when you know you are guilty? How do you handle that? This was a public sin. Oh, you didn't think I was going to go there. Just ask Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. All four Gospels speak about Peter's public sin. Imagine everyone knowing what your year's been like. How do you deal with it? What would you say to Peter? So Peter goes in John chapter 21. I end with this parallel. He goes, and he goes back to fishing. He was a fisherman. And I think, why would you go back to the Sea of Galilee? But if you look at Luke chapter 5, verse 1 to 11, it was at the Sea of Galilee where Jesus called him. Note the parallel now. They fish all night. Luke 5. They catch nothing. Jesus appears on the scene. And suddenly, they catch a multitude of fish. No, I'm not talking about John 21. I'm still in Luke 5. John 21, at the end of Jesus' ministry, Peter, joined by the other disciples, fish all night, catch nothing. Jesus appears, and he says, cast your nets on the right side of the boat. I want you to know that there's still time to hear a word from Christ even today. If you and I will just become a bit more restful and allow the peace speaker to speak, he will give us instructions. Cast your net on the right side. What a strange command. But the creator of the universe simultaneously gives a command to Peter and to all the fish in the Sea of Galilee to go to the right side of the boat. It may not make sense to us. But what does make sense is when Christ speaks, it's really never too late to change lanes. Even when you are failing at everything in your life. That's where Peter was. Failed at being a disciple. Now he was failing at being a fisherman. Change lanes, Peter. Change lanes. Jesus in John 21 had everything prepared. You don't need to prepare for 2025. Jesus has everything prepared for you. Don't wait for 2025 to change lanes. Change lanes now. So, what are the lanes in your life? I end with this acronym, and thank you to the media team. This is just a way of reminding ourselves. LANES. Lanes. What changes do we need to make? Perhaps L, embracing God's love, showing it to others. Or A, adoration, worshiping and honoring God in all aspects of our lives. What are the changes that we need to make? And, well, perhaps newness. Change lanes. Perhaps experiencing newness in our lives. The renewing of our minds. E, perhaps a different perspective. Perhaps all you see this year is 2024 when there's so much more to see. Living intentionally with hope and a focus on not just now, but the bigger picture. Change lanes, my dear brother, my dear sister. Perhaps S would be service. It cannot just be about you. God is calling us to something far greater. Serving others, just like Christ did. John 21 ends, and Jesus' last words to Peter was, because Peter, I don't know if there are any Peters here. Any? No? Even if your name was Peter, I'm sure you wouldn't put up your hand. The problem was that Peter, even after things were sorted out with him and Jesus, read about it in John 21, 3 times Jesus, 3 times he denied, 3 times Jesus cleared, sorted. I don't know where you are, but Jesus is waiting for you. He wants to sort things out. And perhaps, like Peter, you need to go back. Go back to the basics. Go back to where Jesus called you. Go back to where you know you will find him. Peter ends up in a very strange conversation with Jesus. And Jesus has to remind him, Peter, just stop now. Stop looking around, Peter. Stop looking at what so-and-so or brother so-and-so, sister so-and-so is doing. Peter, you keep your eyes focused and fixed on me. Let's change lanes. Stop looking around. Stop being occupied with what others are doing in the other lanes. Keep your eyes fixed on Jesus. May God bless you. And may 2024 end well for you. God bless you.